Simon's Quest is notorious for its poor localization, as immortalized in the angry video game nerd's first video, in which he let loose all his vitriol on this much maligned title. In order to give Simon's Quest a fair shot at redemption, I decided to try it with a retranslation patch that fixed many of the errors in the original US release. There's a link in the description below. Simon's Quest was originally released in Japan in 1987 as Dorakura 2, Noroi no Fuin, and was only available for the Famicom Disk System. Noroi no Fuin translates to Seal of the Curse. Simon's Quest is a good fit for the FDS because it supports game saves, which are sorely missed in the original Western localization. Instead, we have these massive passwords that return us to the nearest town with all our inventory intact, except 0 experience points and 0 hearts. Of course, the biggest difference with the Famicom Disk System version is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is amazing on both platforms, but the FDS version is next level. Before we dive into Simon's Quest, let's listen to a quick comparison of the music. They're both great, but that extra MIDI channel on the FDS is really the difference maker. One way the cartridge release is much better is the absence of load times. The disc version has to load up for 7 seconds every time you leave a town, and it is painful. If you're not too familiar with Simon's Quest, it's a 2D platform adventure game that picks up the story from the first Castlevania and features the same protagonist, only in a wildly different style. Instead of moving from castle block to castle block fighting monsters, Simon is on a quest to rid himself of the curse of Dracula. You see, apparently, Dracula placed a curse on Simon prior to his death that can only be lifted if Simon brings him back to life just to kill him again. Or the curse, I guess, was on maybe the town or the country. I don't know. Story writing in video games in the 80s wasn't really quite the big deal it is today. I think the original Japanese menu probably explains it a lot better than I can. This translation comes from B. Clark OMP at the site 1millionpower.com. Akumajo Dorakura. 7 years have passed since the final scene that we witnessed there, and once again we return to the Transylvanian countryside. Our hero Simon Belmont has defeated Dracula and sent him back to his 100-year slumber. However, he sacrificed much of himself during that battle. The wounds on his back have been eating further away at his body day by day, and he can feel his own death drawing nearer. One morning, Simon went before the graves of the Belmont family on the Hill of Angels and looked back on his life. He then felt a presence behind him. When he turned around, he saw a lone woman in the morning mist. The woman said to him, "Your life is being manipulated by an evil curse. You are in grave danger. But if you have it within your heart to risk your life and stand up to that evil, God will grant you strength. The strength of the curse builds over time, and when it reaches its peak, Dracula will be resurrected once again. There is but one way to permanently destroy his body. That is to begin his resurrection today, 7 years to the day from when his body was first destroyed. He will appear when the 5 pieces of him are brought together. Find these pieces while the strength of the curse is still weak, and burn them in his castle in order to seal him away. By doing this, you'll finally be able to bring an end to the legend of Dracula. You'll finally be free from this curse, and the wounds on your back will be able to heal. That is the only way to defeat Dracula forever." With those words, the woman disappeared into the mist, and our hero Simon Belmont began his second journey with a new determination. This is the only way. Fight, Simon. Please remember bitter memories in Transylvania. That's a really excellent translation, and I want to point out that translation is as much art as it is science. So B. Clark OMP also used a lot of his own writing talent to make that sound as good as it did. It sounds quite a lot better than anything that we heard or saw in the US regarding this game. Of course, as we know, the storyline didn't really quite work out that way because Dracula does of course come back. While Castlevania 3 takes place before the first Castlevania, there are several Castlevania games that came out later on that come to happen after this story, so I guess it didn't really permanently destroy Dracula, but I guess they probably weren't really planning on releasing any more games at that time. So anyway, in order to complete Simon's quest and undo Dracula's curse, you'll have to explore a semi-open world and visit each of the mansions where his followers have scattered his remains. Along the way, you'll use hearts to purchase various equipment upgrades, including whips, sub-weapons, and even laurels and garlic, which have specific uses in the course of the game. Simon can even gain up to 6 levels here, even though each area has its own experience cap. This is one of the reasons why Simon's Quest is considered by many to be the first Metroidvania title, although it was not inspired by Metroid. Sorely missing though is a map. You'll really wish you had one here, especially in the mansions where you can get turned around pretty easily, and finding the merchant that sells wooden stakes that you need to burst open the container that holds Dracula's parts is a chore all by itself. He's usually hiding. The mansions will also vex Simon with false floors, invisible platforms, and relentless monsters. The areas outside the castle are equally treacherous, especially at night when the enemies become stronger. Once night falls, even the towns become a no man's land as the inhabitants shutter their doors and bloodthirsty zombies roam the streets. By light of day, Simon will need to ask the villagers for their help in solving the various puzzles leading to Dracula's remains. Some will try to help, but others are secretly Dracula's followers and will tell Simon blatant lies in order to confuse him. You can get one of 3 endings depending on how long it takes you to complete the game. I got the bad ending because it did a lot of heart grinding, but if you know where to go and don't mind skipping some weapons or not leveling up all the way, you can finish the game in about 2 hours. Back in the 80s, we used to spend weeks on this game, entire weekends. I remember renting this game. Luckily there were some passwords scrawled inside the manual, but it's a game that I don't think I finished until months after its release, after several rentals and borrowings of the game. A big complaint about the localization is the large number of grammar and spelling errors, and just general poor language used in the villagers' clues. Like, what the heck is a graveyard duck? Some of them make no sense or are just hopelessly misleading. While the original translation is often cited as having many errors, in recent years it's become the consensus, mainly due to the diligent work of the online translation community, that many misleading clues were simply lies in both versions. However, this does not excuse the fact that many helpful clues have been mangled beyond redemption. For this reason, a guide is required in order to complete the NES version, and I know we all referred to Nintendo Power back in the day to get us through this one. While the rank and file monsters in this game are really hard, the bosses are laughably easy. You can even walk right past them if you want to. The Grim Reaper can be skipped entirely, and you can simply leave the room if any boss hurts you too badly. But they won't. After the unforgiving difficulty of the original Castlevania, these bosses seem pathetic by comparison. You get 3 lives, but you have unlimited continues. However, be warned, using continue will cost you all of your hearts and any experience points you've gained since the last level that you gained. The Retranslation patch features more than just a new translation of Simon's Quest, but it also adds battery saves, which will really come in handy and allow you to bypass those clumsy passwords. Even better than that, the world map has been added. Because this is an open world laid out in 2D, it can still be a little confusing even with a map, but being able to see which town or mansion you're at and the name of the nearby areas, plus track which direction you're moving in, are all massively helpful. The grammatical errors have been fixed, and many townspeople give more direct information now, rather than the original vague and cryptic text. Some may dislike this, as the vague and cryptic text was usually intentional. This does make it much easier to figure out what to do next without too much guesswork. Overall, the translation patch makes a huge difference in the gameplay experience, but I recommend playing this game with or without the patch. Just use a guide if you're going to play the original version. It really is an excellent game, deserving of a playthrough, and contributed a lot to what would become the franchise of Castlevania. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you want to help the channel grow, please subscribe and leave a comment down below. Until next time, game over.